The MC of our story, Ghislain Peridium, is infamous for being a wild, uncontrollable swordmaster. He's often locked away in his room, supposedly out of his mind. And on top of it all, he's known as the worthless eldest son of Count Peridium. With titles like that, you'd expect just another pampered noble brat. But that's far from the truth. At least, not anymore. His opponent is starting to figure that out. The hard way. This bearded guy facing Ghislain can't believe what's happening. He's getting thoroughly beaten by someone he thought was just useless scum. Meanwhile, Ghislain is calm and collected, cool as ever during the fight. Internally, he's actually satisfied, because all the money he dumped into setting up this trap is finally showing results. With a smirk, Ghislain asks the bearded man if he's enjoying the unexpected twist. That only pisses the guy off more, because it feels like Ghislain knew exactly how things were going to play out. And guess what? Ghislain proudly admits it. He didn't just anticipate the enemy's plan. He knew everything from the start. The number of soldiers, the identity of the spies who provided reinforcements. He had it all figured out. The bearded man is stunned. He starts yelling furiously that his secret weapon has been exposed by someone he once dismissed as worthless. But Ghislain isn't in the mood for his whining. He shuts him up with a solid kick to the face, making it clear this guy can scream all he wants. But no matter how many fights break out, Ghislain is confident. He'll come out on top every single time. So, how is he so sure of winning? Simple, because he knows everything. Let's rewind for a second. Almost a year ago, in the kingdom of Lithuania, near the Peridium estate, Ghislain Peridium woke up in pure shock. He was alive, but he shouldn't have been. The last thing he remembered was being caught in the middle of a hopeless battle, squaring off against one of the continent's elite, the Seven Noble Knights, a man named Ajuin, the very man destined to kill him. Now, Ghislain wasn't just some random nobody either. He used to be one of the top 7 mercenary kings on the continent, feared and respected everywhere, under the name Ghislain Peridium. But before ending Ghislain's life, Ajuin mocked him, saying he never expected to see the trash of the fallen Peridium family again. For what Ajuin knew, Ghislain had vanished after his sister's death, and his name had become nothing but a fading memory. That completely threw Ghislain off. He asked how the hell Ajuin knew so much about his past. Ajuin told him he'd been tracking him for a long time, because he was one of the people involved in the destruction of the Peridium family. He had worked alongside the Delphine household to bring them down. Hearing one of them made Ghislain freeze. That meant the Delphine household hadn't acted alone. There were others who played a role in his family's ruin. And now, one of those very people was standing right in front of him. His hatred and thirst for revenge surged like never before, and then Ajuin cut his head clean off. But strangely, Ghislain later woke up whole, unharmed, and very much alive. Not only was his body intact with no sign of injury, but he even looked noticeably younger. He looks around, clearly confused about what's going on. Just then, someone calls out to him, addressing him as young master, and urging him to come out. The man is actually a soldier from the Peridium household, Ricardo. But before Ricardo can say much, he finds a sharp sword aimed directly at his neck. As Ghislain demands answers immediately, Ricardo, clueless about the situation, agrees to answer whatever his master asks, though he can't understand why a sword is necessary for a conversation. Even Ghislain is completely taken aback by Ricardo's bizarre reaction. After all, this guy was supposed to be his enemy. Ricardo quickly pulls himself free from Ghislain's grip, then reminds him he'd totally collapsed from exhaustion earlier after throwing a massive tantrum. He'd been stressing out, agonizing over how to lead a raid on the orcs naturally. This explanation naturally makes zero sense to Ghislain. Then Ricardo tells him to grab his gear and head out, because everyone else is waiting outside. Ghislain, still completely lost, asks where they're even going. Ricardo informs him they're heading straight for the Peridium estate. Hearing his own family's name utterly shocks Ghislain. As far as he knows, that estate was completely destroyed. But as they reach a hill overlooking it, he gets a crystal clear view, and it's unmistakably the Peridium estate. fully intact. He had once seen it burn to the ground, and now here it stands. Ricardo, still a bit confused, mumbles under his breath, wondering why his master keeps referring to his own home as if it had fallen. If the Count ever hears that, there could be serious consequences. To try and make sense of it, Ghislain pinches his cheek, hoping this is all just a dream. But the pain is real. That's when it finally hits him. He's younger now, the estate is untouched, and everything seems to have reverted to how it once was, which means he's traveled back in time. Back then, his younger self was deeply resentful toward his family. That immaturity, rooted in deep feelings of inferiority, caused endless trouble. Eventually, people in the household started actively avoiding him, and unable to handle the constant criticism, he simply ran away. Years later, he became a mercenary, survived brutal battles, honed his skills, and earned a name for himself. He returned to Peridium, hoping to make amends. But by then, the estate had already been tragically reduced to ashes. He had lost everything, but now somehow it's all back. Everyone he cared about is still alive. He's completely overwhelmed, realizing he's been given an incredible second chance. But there's no time to celebrate. From what Ricardo mentioned, they're on their way to raid the orcs. And Ghislain remembers this day all too well. It was the day nearly everyone in his squad died. In his past life, he had joined the orc raid squad to prove himself. The report back then had mentioned only 3 orcs. So Ghislain, with no command experience, thought it'd be easy peasy. But when they arrived, they were ambushed by over 20 orcs because of his recklessness and pride. Most of the squad was wiped out. Right now, our MC feels pretty confident that the situation is manageable, mainly because those orcs don't seem to have any real tactics. But the real issue is whether his soldiers will actually trust him, considering they all think he's just some worthless loser. Unfortunately, it doesn't even get a moment to prepare, because out of nowhere, a watchtower gets completely wiped out. As a massive horde of orcs comes charging in, Ghislain is absolutely stunned by this sudden attack. He hadn't expected these creatures to strike so soon. The orcs are tearing through the soldiers like it's nothing, and each one is powerful, enough to wipe out multiple foot soldiers. Single-handedly, Raid Squad Commander Schofield jumps into the fray and shouts for everyone to form a defensive line. But honestly, it looks like no formation or tactic is going to stop these savage beasts who are slaughtering people nonstop. Even Schofield is convinced they're doomed. Getting ambushed like this, with zero preparation, is just brutal. And to make things worse, there are way more of these monsters than anyone expected. With the way things are spiraling, Schofield is sure they're all going to die. Then suddenly, someone shouts at the commander. When Scoven turns around, he sees a massive beast about to crush him with its axe. He barely has time to react. That's when Ghislain lunges in, yanks Scoven out of harm's way, and slices straight through the monster's hand, like it's just a common cucumber. Everyone is utterly speechless. How did Ghislain manage that so effortlessly when he's supposedly the useless one? The beast collapses while Ghislain mutters in irritation about still not being able to use mana. He walks right up to the commander, offers his hand, demanding command over the troops, but Scovin flatly refuses. He doesn't believe a so-called worthless brat should be leading during such a dire moment. He even asks Ghislain if he thinks this is some kind of game, even if Ghislain is the young master. Scovin says he can't just hand over authority, given by the Lord so easily. But Ghislain had already guessed that. No one would believe in him. And now he's getting seriously pissed. Just then, another monster charges at them, and Scovin steps in, thinking Ghislain is too inexperienced to handle this. But Ghislain decides it's time to shut these idiots up and show them what he can really do. He hurls his sword at the beast with insane speed. The commander immediately starts yelling at him for disobeying orders, but shuts right up when he sees the ORC drop dead from a single, precise hit. It's clear the sword struck with terrifying precision. The commander stands there, looking like he's suffering from a serious case of constipation. Meanwhile, Ghislain stares him down and asks if he even knows the most crucial thing in battle. Of course, the commander doesn't. because clearly, he's the real useless one here. Gislin shifts his focus toward the frightened soldiers and reminds Scovin that there's no way to win a battle when fear has already paralyzed the troops. The first step should be gaining momentum. With that, our guy dashes forward once more. He yanks his sword from the monster's skull and launches himself into the air. He lands squarely on another orc and drives his blade straight into its head. Scovin can hardly believe what he's seeing. Meanwhile, our boy boldly challenges the monsters, taunting them to come at him if they want to die. Predictably, these brainless beasts charge straight at him, and he slices right through them. With the precision and speed of a ninja, on an insane energy rush, he tears apart every single one that dares cross his path. His movements, his reflexes, everything is happening at such incredible speed that Scovin is left completely frozen, staring in utter disbelief. Even as a mana user, he can't keep up, so he can't begin to fathom how his skinny young master is pulling this off. Scovin notices that, despite the obvious signs of fatigue, our guy is still evading attacks with the bare minimum of motion, and his sword strikes land perfectly on the enemy's weak points. It's like a master swordsman who can't even use mana, or maybe even someone beyond that level. But our MC isn't done. He keeps provoking the monsters, mocking them for being nothing like the fearsome warrior race they're rumored to be. The other soldiers are just as stunned, watching as every single orc charges toward the young master. They turn to their commander, waiting for orders, but the coward doesn't even come close to showing the kind of guts our boy has. He's still trying to process the fact that the young master deliberately charged into a swarm of orcs just to draw their attention. He doesn't get why. He's now running straight toward the edge of the cliff, but it soon clicks. He plans to lure the orcs off the cliff. Acting fast, Scovin orders his troops to raise their shield wall and prepare to back him up. Meanwhile, the orcs are right behind our guy, chasing him down. MC trusts that Scovin, being the capable commander he is, will catch on to the plan. As much as he'd love to hack every one of these orcs to pieces himself, he just doesn't have the stamina. But this plan isn't bad either. At the cliff's edge, the orcs realize too late, with soldiers lying in wait right behind them. Without a moment's hesitation, in a defensive formation, our MC boldly leaps off the cliff edge, signaling Scovin to follow his lead. The soldiers charge in, smashing right into the monsters, shoving them mercilessly off the cliff to their doom below. The audacious move pays off, eliminating every last orc. Though utterly drained, the soldiers manage to pull through. Scovin, however, is still frozen in shock, where he spots our MC clinging precariously to the cliffside, his sword jammed into the rock, barely holding him up. Even in this perilous situation, there's not a hint of fear on his face. Only a confident, almost cheeky, smirk aimed directly at Scovin. For a moment, the big mustache commander is completely thrown off, but then a proud smile slowly spreads across his face. He quickly reaches out a helping hand, but it falls heartbreakingly short. The grip on the sword suddenly loosens, and just like that, the boy begins to fall, leaving everyone utterly stunned by this sudden twist. Meanwhile, Gislin begins slipping into unconsciousness, drifting into a hazy, dreamlike state, where he hears his sister's voice and sees scattered, fading fragments of memories involving her. He doesn't quite understand what's happening at first, until suddenly she grabs his hand, and just like that, he's abruptly pulled out of the dream. He jolts violently awake in bed, confused and utterly shocked that he's even alive. As he tries to push himself up, a brutal wave of pain rushes through his entire body, making even the smallest movements agonizing. Every single inch of him aches. A harsh reminder of just how far he pushed himself. But in a strange, twisted way, it reassures him he survived. Just at that moment, a maid enters the room with a visibly relieved smile. It takes him just a second to realize it's Belinda. She's clearly both overjoyed and utterly furious, scolding him endlessly for all the stress he caused. But Gislin doesn't hesitate for a second. He immediately throws his arms around her, hugging her as tightly as he can. She's totally bewildered by this sudden outburst of affection, unaware that for him, seeing her again after all this time is simply overwhelming. You see, Belinda had been his personal maid since he was a child. Through all the absolute chaos he'd caused, she was the one who always stuck by his side. But after his family's devastating downfall, she vanished completely, and he never imagined their paths would cross again. Now, with her standing right before him, he feels an undeniable urge to be completely honest. So, he drops a bombshell, revealing a shocking truth. A catastrophic disaster is hurtling straight towards Perry DM. He even admits that he actually died and inexplicably came back to life. Naturally, Belinda completely brushes off his claims. She agrees the orcs nearly did him in, but she outright refuses to believe his bizarre, fantastical tale. He attempts to explain further, but she simply scolds him for his recklessness. Realizing she won't believe him, no matter what he says, he finally gives up. Belinda then cleverly shifts the topic, reminding him of the much-anticipated upcoming festival. It's something he would have definitely missed if he'd remained injured. That sudden reminder catches Giselin completely off guard. Noticing his blank expression, she reminds him that Lady Elena has been eagerly looking forward to attending with him. It's the perfect opportunity for the siblings to reconnect and mend their relationship. Suddenly, Giselin vividly remembers this festival from his past life. He never got to enjoy it because at that exact time, it was around this time, that something truly traumatic had happened. So, when he asks how much time is left, she tells him it's happening next week. He has just 1 week to prepare. But this isn't just about a simple festival. In his previous life, this exact day marked a profound tragedy that haunted him forever. On the very day of the festival, his beloved sister Elena was tragically destined to die. Right on cue, as if summoned by fate, Elena walks into the room. Giselin instantly pulls her into a tight embrace, catching her completely off guard and startling her. Blushing furiously, she accuses him of playing some weird prank. She doesn't realize how incredibly real and intense his feelings are. He's simply overwhelmed with emotion to see her alive. But since he stubbornly refuses to let go, Elena ends up forcefully pulling herself away, leaving his weakened body swaying precariously under the sudden pressure. Turns out, she's got some serious strength. From her reaction, it's abundantly clear. The two siblings don't exactly have a warm, affectionate relationship. Elena bluntly states she's only here because Belinda specifically asked her to come. Apparently, there's some unresolved past grudge between them. Elena still remembers the sting of his past insults. Giselin, initially clueless, eventually realizes, yeah, I wasn't exactly a great brother in my past life. Honestly, he was kind of an asshole. So, he does something truly shocking. He apologizes. Both Belinda and Elena are stunned. Giselin admitting fault? That's just unheard of. They joke he must have gotten hit in the head too hard by those orcs knocking something loose. But Giselin quickly shuts that down, insisting he truly got them right then. Just then, another wave of pain hits, and he doubles over. Elena doesn't miss the chance to poke fun, clearly relishing the moment. It's obvious who came out worse in that fight. But Giselin doesn't mind her jabs, even with her sarcastic comments. He's just glad to see them, being exactly the way he remembers. There's something comforting about it. And in that moment, he can't help but think, why did the old me waste so much time on things that didn't matter? During the upcoming festival preparations, Giselin had turned down Elena's offer to attend together, using the raid squad incident as his excuse. That ended up being the last time he ever saw her. Not long after, Elena and her bodyguards were found brutally torn apart. Giselin still regrets not being there for her when it mattered most. Suddenly, a knock interrupts their moment. Two knights appear at the door. Elena's bodyguards. The one with dark brown hair is Jamal, and standing behind him is Philip. Elena questions their presence, since they were told to wait outside. One of them apologizes and explains that the servants have requested her to supervise the festival preparations. This catches Giselin completely off guard. He doesn't understand why Elena needs to be involved in that. Belinda looks disappointed at his reaction and reminds him of the worker shortage in Peridium. Even someone like Elena has to pitch in. It's only now that Gislin realizes this, since he never really paid attention before. He'd never paid attention to such things before, but now that he's here, he actually offers to help. His little sister is utterly stunned by this, and both girls can't help but wonder if he might have actually been knocked in the head, or something like that. Soon, they finally reach the festival site, where everyone's bustling, setting up their stalls. But when word gets out that Gislin wants to help, a strange unease begins to creep in. His sister keeps trying to push him away, insisting that the best way he can help is by not getting in the way, or causing any trouble. But Gislin stubbornly refuses to leave her alone. After all, Elena's body was discovered near the slums, quite far from the festival location. Someone must have either lured her out, or perhaps even dragged her there. He's determined to ensure nothing like that happens again. And for that to happen, he needs to fully understand the castle's layout. Just then, a knight comes rushing in, calling for Gislin. It's old man Fergus. He's out of breath, but clearly emotional, and starts crying, admitting how scared he was after hearing about the orc attack. Gislin's sister quickly jumps in too, pointing out how strangely he's been acting lately. She thinks that it might be best if Fergus just takes him back. Seeing no other choice, Gislin agrees, but requests to be taken to the abandoned training field in the castle instead. Fergus, puzzled, asks why. Gislin simply says he wants to train, though unsure what the young master is planning. The old man doesn't press him further, and leads him to the training hall. As Gislin steps inside, the first thing that strikes him is how incredibly well-kept the training hall is, far better than he ever imagined. It's the perfect spot for him to train, and the equipment? It's way more advanced than anything he ever came across during his mercenary days. The old man then explains that they've kept the place in pristine shape, just in case Gislin ever wanted to return. He'd always believed Gislin would eventually overcome whatever inner turmoil he's battling. That genuine concern actually makes Gislin pause. He'd never truly realized just how much the old man had been trying to support him. The realization hits him hard. A wave of guilt washes over him for not noticing it sooner. Then quietly, he pats the old man's shoulder and says something, half joking, half serious. Dying sucks, so he might as well try living a while longer. The old man, as usual, is completely baffled hearing him talk, like he's already crossed over to the afterlife. But Gislin just shrugs and admits it. Yeah, he did die and came back. Not that the old man buys any of it, though. Without dwelling on it further, Gislin turns his focus back to training. He dismisses the old man, telling him he can leave now. Watching Fergus show him so much respect makes Gislin reflect on how he's always treated those around him like enemies. But now looking back, he realizes he was just being narrow-minded. Still, he can't get distracted. There's serious work ahead. In his past life, he heard that Elena's death was orchestrated by a lord from a neighboring territory. That one act dragged Peridium into a war that ultimately led to its destruction. Her death was the first domino in the fall of his house, and now he's determined to fix everything. Starting right here. First priority, rebuild his body. Time's short, but if nothing else, he needs to gain control of his mana. In this world, mana is a mystical force that allows humans to surpass their limits. Most people struggle to even sense or absorb it, but for Gislin, even in the middle of chaotic battles, that part came naturally. He starts bundling the mana particles from the air, weaving them together like spinning thread. With countless battles under his belt, maybe even tens of thousands, forming a mana core is second nature. Damn, but if it were really that easy, he wouldn't be one of the top 7, the strongest individuals in the land, drawing power from a half-burned magic book, and harnessing the natural mana core all humans possess. Gislin manages to forge not just a second, but an incredible third core. He links them into a complex mesh of interconnected cores, forming a massive burst of energy. But the effort takes a heavy toll. Blood trickles from his nose and mouth, and sweat pours down his face. He's definitely hit his current limit. Back in his previous life, however, he had managed to reach 5 cores. The entire technique is about generating an overwhelming force in a short time, but it guzzles mana at an insane rate. That's actually why he lost to Eden before. The guy showed up with an entire night order, while Ghislain was already running on empty. In a fair one-on-one, however, he would have absolutely crushed him. This technique might be unstable, but it's enough for now. This time, he's got a younger body, and all the time he needs to master it. And this time, Eden's head, it's his for the taking. As for the traitors backing House Delphine, the ones who helped ruin their homeland, they're going down too. A week quickly goes by, and the long-awaited day of the festival finally arrives. Ghislain is all geared up, walking through town with steady, unshakable confidence. But as he moves along, he unexpectedly spots his sister, who looks absolutely surprised to see him. She's stunned, not just because he showed up to the festival, which he's never liked, but also because he's been acting so strangely lately. All she's been hearing is how he's done nothing but train nonstop for the past week. Trying to play it cool, Ghislain brushes off her concern, casually, reminding her that as the heir to a knightly family, training is simply a normal part of his life. But she doesn't let it slide so easily. She hits him with a harsh reminder. He's always despised the idea of becoming lord. That exact attitude, she points out, was a huge reason he never got along with her father. And even though her words sting a bit, she actually walks away with a smile, clearly thrilled to see him finally stepping into the role he was destined to fill. Her comment truly lingers in Ghislain's mind, making him suddenly realize that his actions have already begun to shift how people perceive him, and possibly even altering the course of his future. While major events might still play out the same, the smaller details are becoming harder to predict. And now, using his knowledge of what's to come wisely has become his solemn responsibility. He'll need to handle every situation with utmost care. With that firmly in mind, he's fully prepared to confront the very ones who will kill his sister. For now, he remains vigilantly by Elena's side, staying alert. But after some time, she quickly starts getting bored and complains that this year's festival feels just as dull as all the others before it. Meanwhile, Ghislain is deep in thought. The festival is nearly done, and still, nothing major has happened. This makes him wonder, could the future have truly changed simply because he stayed so close to Elena? Just as that thought hits him, bodyguards appear. They suggest taking Elena to a livelier part of the festival so she can truly enjoy herself a bit more. As they begin to escort her away, Ghislain quickly puts the pieces together. These two, Jamal and Philip, are the supposed trusted knights who have protected Elena since childhood. In his past life, they were said to have been killed while defending her. But now doubts start creeping in. Ghislain becomes utterly convinced it's a trap. These guys must be the traitors within the family. He follows them stealthily. The spot they arrive at is completely deserted, which immediately irks Elena. She immediately starts complaining about how pointless this all is. As she vents, Ghislain's suspicions only deepen. At first glance, it appears to be just an empty street, but the way debris and objects strategically block every exit. That clearly shows this was prepared well ahead of time. Just then, his thoughts are shattered when Elena suddenly grabs his arm and starts dragging him along, stunned by her strength. Ghislain jokingly asks if she's been hitting the gym, because for a young lady, she's seriously strong. But before she can reply, Jamal steps in to stop her, and the expression on his face says it all. His intentions are clearly far from good. Elena starts trembling, panic creeping in, as she wonders why everyone is acting so strangely. Jamal quickly apologizes for scaring her, but then his expression twists into something even more disturbing. He calmly says he just wants her to wait a little longer, claiming it's a small favor. Elena, now terrified and feeling utterly helpless, is interrupted by the arrival of someone new. A man wearing glasses steps into the scene, trailed by two of his goons. His name is Frank, and he looks quite satisfied with how well Jamal has handled things so far. Frank then turns to Jamal, confused about why Ghislain is even here. He doesn't recall ever asking for this extra baggage. Jamal tries to reassure him, saying he'll handle the kid himself, and Frank won't even have to pay. Gislin, it turns out, had blindly followed his sister, completely unaware that he was walking right into a death trap. Finally, Gislin speaks. The first thing he demands is how this traitorous bastard plans to get away with betraying the Peridium family. But the man just laughs, barely fazed. He arrogantly claims all he has to do is run far away. He's done with this broken, poverty-ridden land that's already been ravaged by barbarians. And he's not alone. Plenty of others want to leave Peridium too. But before he can finish that sentence, the main character strikes. No words, just blood spilling from his mouth as he drops. Sliced clean in two. Everyone is stunned. Jamal hits the ground, lifeless, and Gislin glares at the corpse. Furious, he reminds the traitor that, even those who chose to abandon this land, they never once betrayed their own. His fury ignites as he locks eyes with the second traitor. The second traitor panics, yanking Elena closer, hoping she'd shield him from the same fate. He's dead wrong. A sword plunges straight through his skull. He quivers, gasping for air as death claims him too. Now, Frank's goons start having second thoughts, wondering if they even want to get involved. What truly throws them off is that this guy, supposedly the eldest son of Peridium, isn't supposed to have any real combat experience. No training, no skills. At least, that's what they believed. But Frank confirms it. This is the eldest son. Still, he can't comprehend how this guy just wiped out 2 men. Like it was nothing, and even more shocking, his attacks were released with mana. Meanwhile, the girl clung to her brother, shaking with fear, but without hesitation. He knocked her out with a quick strike to the neck, telling her to get some rest. Frank, that smug bastard, thanked our guy for dispatching the 2 knights, pretending they had planned to handle them themselves. He even praised Gislin's godlike skills, and couldn't help but ask where he learned them. But Gislin wasn't having any of it. He shut them down cold, making it clear it was none of their business. He quickly sized them up, 3 of them all together, but only the one in the middle seemed to be giving off any real mana. Still, no matter who they were, Gislin was ready to end this fast. Before making his move, he demanded to know who hired them to stage the ambush. Frank, with that annoying smirk, brushed it off, acting like someone about to die. Didn't deserve to ask questions. Of course, Gislin knew they wouldn't give up the information so easily, but he had his own methods for making people talk. One of the goons suggested just cutting his head off, but their boss shut him down, saying he wanted him alive. He planned to break every bone in Gislin's body until he was a broken, helpless cripple, writhing in unbearable agony, making sure his torment was long and utterly brutal. Instantly, 2 of the lackeys lunged forward, but Gislin was ready, waiting. In a flash, he whipped out a firecracker and tossed it straight at them. That completely disoriented one of the thugs. He froze, if only for a split second, completely baffled as to why anyone would use a mere firecracker like that. But that fleeting moment of hesitation was all Gislin required. In the blink of an eye, he closed the distance, killing one instantly. The second lackey then lunged at him, but Gislin remained utterly unfazed. He smoothly blocked the incoming attack, disarming him and tearing the sword from his grip. Not wasting a single moment, he followed through, cutting the man down. As if it were nothing, right as the second lackey hit the ground, their leader attempted a cheap, sneaky move by sneaking behind Gislin for a surprise blow. But our hero's reflexes were razor sharp. He effortlessly blocked the ambush like it was nothing. Frank stood there completely stunned, realizing his surprise attack had completely flopped, and Gislin certainly wasn't about to let that slide. He retaliated immediately. In an instant, his sword moving with such speed Frank could barely react. The blade slashed deep and true across his throat, and the pipe he'd been smoking clattered to the ground. Frank, utterly desperate now, launched another desperate attack, but Gislin simply blocked it again with ease. Even Frank grudgingly had to admit, without using mana to protect his neck, he would have been completely finished. And even Gislin had to hand it to him. He'd concentrated all his mana around his neck to reduce the damage. Quite impressive, honestly. That's when Frank finally decided to get deadly serious. Gripping his sword tightly, he lunged, hurling himself at Gislin. But just as he moved, he caught a glimpse of Gislin's grin, as if he'd been waiting for this very moment. That split second of confusion was all Gislin needed. Gislin utterly overpowered him and slammed a brutal kick right in his face. Frank skillfully lands on his feet instead of crashing and smirks confidently, boasting that with his immense mana levels, a simple move like that won't faze him. But his confidence shatters instantly when he violently coughs up a geyser of blood. His expression twists in complete confusion. He has no clue what just hit him. Even though his body was reinforced with dense mana, he can't believe Gislin still managed to break through it with nothing but sheer raw skill. Meanwhile, Gislin's thoughts drift to the mystery surrounding his beloved sister's death. He never knew who was responsible until now. And now that he does, he's ready to make this bastard pay. He warns Frank to brace himself, because things are about to get very real. Then, Gislin activates his third core. Frank stands there, stunned, but he doesn't get the luxury of time to react. Gislin's already charging him. They clash at such insane speed that only the glowing trails of their blades are visible. Frank fights back with everything he's got, but it's clear he's falling behind. His hands are going numb, and no matter how much mana he channels, it's simply not enough. His sword starts to crack from the sheer pressure. He's never even heard of a technique that boosts mana to this insane level, especially with such control. It's like Gislin has transformed into an entirely new person, and that new person lands a brutal strike, slashing Frank hard across the body. But Gislin isn't finished. He drives his sword deep into the man who killed his sister. Still, he doesn't let him die just yet. There are answers he wants, burning questions he needs resolved. Gritting his teeth, Gislin demands to know who ordered the hit on Elena. But Frank isn't about to give up information so easily. He quickly whips out hidden ninja daggers, trying to go after Elena again. But before he can even move, threads block his arm mid-motion. Gislin's the puppet master, pulling every string. He decides to offer Frank one final chance. Answer truthfully, and he'll sheath his blade. Frank, utterly stunned, now realizes these threads are woven from pure mana, meticulously crafted and controlled by Gislin himself. Gislin knows someone of Frank's caliber should be able to patch himself right up. Not that it'll matter once he shatters his mana core. Without a moment's hesitation, he begins pouring magic into the sword, already impaled deep in Frank's gut. The bastard screams as his mana core begins to fracture. It's a dangerous, desperate move. One mistake, and the mana backlash could obliterate the entire area. It genuinely seems like Gislin is risking a full-blown self-destruction. But he's no rookie. He can absolutely handle it. Even Frank can tell Gislin isn't bluffing. When he looks into Gislin's eyes, all he sees is a blood-soaked Reaper staring back. Realizing there's no escape, Frank finally spills the name Count Desmond, the true mastermind behind Elena's assassination. He further confesses this entire incident was part of a much larger scheme, a setup meant to ignite a war between the Peridium and Degard families. Gislin doesn't think much of the name Desmond. In his past life, dirty work like this was always handled by families loyal to the dukes. If his instincts are right, Duke Delphine is likely the true puppet master. Still, the undeniable fact remains, Frank came to kill his sister. So Gislin makes sure to finish him off and take revenge for the past. Frank, in his final, gasping moments, thinks Gislin is going back on his word. But Gislin coldly reminds him of all the sins he's committed. He has no right to be afraid now. That karma has finally caught up. But then, something utterly unexpected happens. Frank starts laughing, even as he bleeds out. He claims nothing will change. Even if Gislin kills him, the damage is already done. He's already completed his mission. With the Degard family, no matter what Gislin does now, Peridium is doomed, and war is practically knocking at the door. Gislin swiftly clamps a hand over the scoundrel's filthy mouth, silencing him, and then quietly reveals the grim truth. He's already died once and clawed his way back to life, so there's absolutely no way he's letting history repeat itself. Those were the last words Frank ever heard before Ghislain activated the mana cores. Shattering process. The mana inside surged backward, and Ghislain redirected it all into the sky, triggering a massive explosion like some bizarre, magical firework. Exhausted, Ghislain could barely catch his breath, but at least everyone who needed to be dealt with had finally been taken care of. Then he noticed his unconscious sister lying there, seemingly safe and peacefully asleep, just as he let his muscles relax and close his eyes for a moment. Blood suddenly spilled from his mouth, and he doubled over in agonizing pain. He thought to himself, back when I was the mercenary king, destroying 3 cores would have been a breeze. But now, with this fragile body, it's clearly limiting my power. Even so, he wasn't ready to give up just yet. He quickly made his way to a nearby house, recalling that in his previous life, a corpse, authorities had found a second body at this very same location along with Elena's. And for what Frank had mentioned earlier, that body was supposedly Degarson's. There was also the escort knight, who had also died during the event. These bodies were the very reason why the Peridium family, in his past life, had assumed the Dagard family was behind Elena's assassination. The moment those corpses were discovered, war had erupted. This time, Ghislain made sure there would be no such evidence. He set the entire house ablaze. After that, he picked up his sister and began walking away. That's when we see some creepy figure in a cap, lurking in the shadows, secretly watching him. Later, that same guy shows up at a shady council. Basically, all the people running the show behind the scenes, and reports that the mission failed. Naturally, the big wigs weren't happy to hear it. One of them, cloaked in a hood, they're pinning everything on Ghislain Peridium. The second his name is uttered, the room instantly tenses. How could nobody from the north pull off something this massive? Another council member scoffs in disbelief, declaring Ghislain's always been utter trash. So blaming such a massive failure on him sounds utterly ridiculous. But the hooded man vehemently insists. Ghislain was nothing like the man their intelligence suggested. His execution of everything was far too skilled, almost as if he'd become an entirely new person. He attempts to placate him, saying he's already handled the situation with the Dagard family, so sparking a territorial war won't be an issue. He desperately pleads for one more chance to prove himself. But one of the higher-ups erupts in a furious rage. The chaos his failure unleashed has already caused grave problems, and now the entire council is plunged into disarray. They all agree the only solution is to eliminate Ghislain. Then the top dog among them finally speaks, cutting through the mounting noise. He asks the hooded man how he plans to handle Ghislain. The reply, he's going to arrange a duel. Make it look natural against any powerful opponent. When pressed for a name, the hooded man reveals it's Cain Loges, a powerhouse swordsman renowned for his brute strength. Despite his youth, Cain is utterly unmatched in physical combat. And here's the kicker. He's Ghislain's own cousin. That familial connection would make their encounter feel perfectly natural, entirely unstaged. The room falls silent as they ponder the idea. But the top guy doesn't let him off the hook so easily. He warns that if this mission also fails, there won't be a second chance. Shaken, the hooded man promptly swears he'll absolutely deliver results this time. The scene then shifts to Peridium Castle's training hall, where Fergus makes his entrance to inform our boy it's time for a meal. But just then, he spots a rope-like thread of mana flying right toward him. It snatches the sword hanging right beside him and quickly retracts, pulling the sword along with it. Ghislain, having practiced for a while now, is pleased to see he's making such swift progress. That's when he finally notices Fergus, who instantly bows his head. Apologies for interrupting your session, but Fergus can't help his burning curiosity. I know how Ghislain pulled off that move. Ghislain casually explains. It's something called mana threads. In his past life, weaving mana like string was second nature to him. But now his current skill level is too low, and he lacks the mana to use it like before. To use it fully, he'd have to implode his core. However, by creating just one thread, he can minimize the mana cost and still use it effectively, despite his limited resources. Fergus admits that Despite training his mana for a long time, he's never seen anything like this. Now that he thinks about it, not long ago, Gislin wasn't even using mana at all, let alone training with it. He's baffled by how Gislin even came up with the idea, shaking himself out of it. Fergus returns to the reason he came. He respectfully nods and thanks Gislin for protecting the young lady. But Gislin brushes it off. There's no need for thanks, he says. She's my sister, and I would have done it no matter what. A few days pass, and the festival is put on hold. Understandable, given that a guardian knight just tried to traffic a noble lady. Meanwhile, Elena is fuming. No one believes her when she says Gislin was the one who saved her. She asks her brother why. He won't step in and convince them. But Gislin just shrugs. He doesn't care. And even if he tried, no one would believe him anyway. Belinda, on the other hand, is absolutely furious. She's enraged thinking about how the real culprits were. Jamal and Phil, the ones who attempted to abduct Elena. Regardless, Gislin is just relieved that his sister is safe and that he managed to prevent a war. But deep down, he knows those bastards won't stop so easily. He can't hold them off forever on his own. He needs to start building his own military force. Right then, a maid enters with his food, but instead of anything decent, Gislin is served only a dry piece of bread. Surprised, he asks Belinda about it. She explains, that's part of the fallout from the recent chaos. Suddenly, a loud voice echoes through the halls. It's some portly merchant yelling for compensation because of the canceled festival. And it's not just him. There's an entire mob of merchants gathered outside, demanding to be reimbursed for their losses. Looking out the window, Gislin asks who they are, and Belinda reminds him. This country's economy relies heavily on merchants and the profits from the festival. Last year was a massive success, but this year it was canceled after just one day. No wonder they're pissed. Only now does Gislin finally realize just how dire the financial situation is. If he doesn't do something soon, things could spiral completely out of control. He tells Fergus to send out soldiers to calm the crowd, but Fergus calmly informs him that there are no soldiers available. Most of them have been dispatched to the Forest of Monsters to help with reconstruction after the orc raid. That just makes things even worse. Peridium is in a constant state of war, with barbarians to the north and monsters to the south. No money means no soldiers, which just piles onto his growing list of problems. Taking Belinda aside, he whispers that since she's in charge of his finances, they need to find a way to settle the merchants down. But Belinda tells him straight, there's no money left. When he asks why, she reminds him that the Lord cut off his funds because he kept spending recklessly. The idea of being broke makes Gislin sick. He demands she lend him some cash, but she doesn't have any either. Everything seems stacked against him. No money, no soldiers, and no way out. Even with all his future knowledge, he's helpless without money to back it up. Just as he's lost in thought, Ricardo bursts into the room at full speed, panting heavily, clearly alarmed. Gislin immediately demands, "What's going on?" Ricardo, practically screaming, reveals there's a serious problem. Young Master Kane is absolutely demanding to see him, and the mere mention of Kane's name catches Gislin completely off guard. And that's when we witness one of our guys, Knight Commander Scovan, getting utterly demolished by Kane. Kane's ridiculously muscular physique and brutal strength are pounding the poor knight's face like it's a ripe, bursting tomato. Every single punch feels like a sledgehammer, and clearly, Kane isn't holding back one bit. The final, devastating blow knocks Scovan out cold. Gislin arrives just in time to find his knight lying, beaten and bloodied on the cold ground. The look on Gislin's face says it all. He's furious. He turns to face his cousin, his eyes blazing with pure rage. The absolute bastard standing before him is massive, so incredibly big that Gislin looks like a scrawny kid in comparison, and that wicked, taunting grin on Kane's face only makes things even more intimidating. Beside Kane stands his escort knight. You see, Kane Logis, heir to the Logis County, is the very one with whom House Peridium once had an alliance. He used to be Gislin's only friend and his biggest rival. After knocking out the commander, Kane casually approaches Ghislain. But Ghislain doesn't flinch, calm and utterly composed. He asks Ricardo to explain exactly what happened. Ricardo recounts that they were responding to a report of trouble at a tavern. That's where they encountered Kane and his escort knight. During the confrontation, Kane asked Commander Scovan if the rumors about Ghislain were true. When Scovan explained the details, Kane suddenly grabbed him by the mouth, accusing him of muttering lies under his breath and refusing to tolerate anyone lying to the heir of Logis. At that point, Ricardo finishes his version of events, but then Kane's escort knight steps in, saying Ricardo conveniently left out a key part. He then recounts Scovian's boast that Ghislain, a guy who'd never even properly trained, had taken down an orc barehanded and single-handedly defeated the traitorous escort knights, all by himself. That's what really set Kane off. He thought Scovan was just spouting ridiculous nonsense, so he gave him a brutal beating as a reality check. Kane then smugly declares none of this would have happened if Scovan hadn't leaked. Ghislain doesn't respond out loud, but inside we hear his true thoughts, and they're absolutely seething with bitterness toward Kane. Kane, once his subordinate, always stirred up chaos. Whenever he visited Peridium, and no matter what kind of mess he made, no one ever dared call him out. Because he was allied with House Peridium, people always respected Kane. But Ghislain, he was constantly judged and looked down upon, while Kane was praised for his bold, confident nature, traits expected from a rightful heir. Ghislain, however, was criticized for not measuring up. Now, from Kane's perspective, even he's surprised at how calm Ghislain is being. Normally, Ghislain would have snapped and lunged at him by now. We then get a flashback to a recent moment in Logan's County. Kane had received a chilling order: kill Ghislain. The one giving the order was a mysterious hooded man, someone who'd previously failed a mission and taken serious heat for it from his superiors. This same hooded figure told Kane that if he succeeded, the esteemed one would back the Logis family. Kane confidently assured him that defeating Ghislain would be incredibly easy. After all, Ghislain was nothing but a weak brat. But there was one thing that gave him pause. Ghislain was still an heir, so killing him could lead to messy political complications. The hooded man suggested a cunning solution: provoke Ghislain into a duel. Make it look like a simple squabble between noble heirs, then stage the whole thing as an unfortunate accident. To make sure things went smoothly, the hooded man offered to disguise himself as one of the escort knights to help orchestrate everything. That way, nothing could possibly go wrong. The idea of getting to murder his own cousin thrilled Kane, and the bastard wasted no time agreeing. In the present, Kane is desperately trying to figure out why. There's an order to eliminate Ghislain. He wonders if Ghislain has perhaps changed recently, which could be the very reason for it all. Still, Kane sticks to the plan to provoke Ghislain. He calls out, asking why Ghislain's just standing there. They're facing off, so he'd better get things ready. Ghislain, utterly confused, he doesn't know what arrangements Kane is referring to. Kane brings up how the festival's been disrupted and suggests they should spice things up and have some fun. He also reminds Ghislain how they've always been on the same page for these kinds of things, but Ghislain barely reacts and vaguely asks if Kane is talking about alcohol. See, this bastard used to make Ghislain prepare booze and women every time he showed up. Back then, Ghislain went along with it just to avoid a beating. But not anymore because of Kane. He burned through a ton of money, which is also why his father ended up cutting his allowance. Now Ghislain has clearly figured out the root of his financial troubles, and he's certain Kane is the problem, and possibly the solution too. Meanwhile, Kane keeps pressing, demanding that Ghislain bring him the goods immediately. Ghislain, playing along, agrees, but says that first, Kane needs to repay the money he owes. The hooded bastard can sense something has changed. Ghislain is giving off a completely different vibe now. Even Kane pauses and seriously asks what debts he's talking about. With a calm smile, Ghislain explains that he's been the one managing all of Kane's requests with his own money, and now he wants at least 1,000 gold back. Kane is stunned. To him, that's a ridiculous number, He thought it should have cost no more than 100 gold. Besides, he believed Ghislain was doing all that because they were friends, like a friends with benefits situation. But Ghislain never saw them as friends. He's been Kane's punching bag for far too long. Now, if Kane values his life at all, he better pay up. He desperately needs that money, and he won't let Kane walk away now. Without paying his dues, the whole room falls silent, and even Ghislain's personal knight, Ricardo, is sweating bullets after hearing such a bold demand. Kane shoots up from his seat, absolutely furious. He thinks Ghislain is getting far too cocky, probably fueled by the rumors swirling around him. To Kane, Ghislain is still just a leech feeding off this land. Boiling with rage, he clenches his fist, ready to crush him right then and there. But even as the punch flies straight at him, Ghislain doesn't even blink. At the last second, he shifts slightly, letting the punch miss completely. Shock fills the room. Kane swings again with full force, but Ghislain simply ducks and drives an open palm strike right into Kane's gut. The blow is so strong, it nearly makes the brute cough up blood. Kane tries to swing again, but this time Ghislain freezes his movement. Even though Kane doesn't actually take any damage, he acts like he's in agony. The hooded figure rushes over, clearly concerned, but it's obvious Kane's pride is the only thing hurt. Ghislain casually tells him to stop faking it. It wasn't even a real hit, but Kane keeps playing the victim. Everyone watching in the pub is left utterly stunned. Ghislain, the supposed weakling, just took Kane down without even trying. People are unsure how to react. Ghislain, of course, knows this bastard is completely faking it, and he knows exactly what Kane's trying to pull. Kane then turns to his hooded knight and smugly asks if he liked the performance. The knight gives him full credit. It was a great act. Kane set things up perfectly to make it seem like Ghislain is the one at fault, just enough to justify a duel. Kane is eager to seize this opportunity. If he helps the higher-ups take down Ghislain, he'll earn their support, plus it give him a chance to finally sever ties against the powerful Peridium household. So he plays along, dramatically pulling out a glove and delivering some truly theatrical lines. He gets ready to declare a duel. But before he can even toss that glove, Ghislain completely beats him to the punch, hurtling the glove right at Kane's face. Challenging him first, after all, Kane did insult the Peridium heir and assaulted his knight right in front of everyone. So now, Ghislain is demanding a duel. Kane's face freezes, but only for a fleeting moment. Then, a dangerous smirk crosses his face as he thinks Ghislain just signed his own death sentence by asking for this duel. But Ghislain keeps that confident, sassy smile plastered on his face. He then turns to Ricardo and instructs him to gather all the merchants who are protesting outside the castle. He wants them to witness something truly monumental, because Ghislain, the young master of the Peridium house himself, is about to make them some serious money. So the festival suddenly got canceled out of nowhere, and the electric atmosphere, which had just hit its peak, just abruptly fizzled out, leaving a whole bunch of disappointed tourists completely stranded and unable to leave or even enjoy themselves. Essentially, like a fire that never quite caught properly. In a situation like this, if something truly exciting were to happen, it would be nothing short of a blessing for them. And that's precisely why, when Ghislain confidently steps into the ring to face that bastard, the crowd absolutely erupts with a roar of excitement. People are pouring in from distant lands, and the market vendors, who were seriously struggling, finally start raking in some much-needed money from these now captivated, stranded tourists. That chubby merchant, the very one who led the protests earlier, now has a full-blown setup, complete with a betting table, letting people eagerly place their bets on the fighters. Most of them, predictably, are betting on Kane Loges, which makes total sense. He seems like the safe bet. Kane, the hulking brute, stands ready, gripping his massive sword, prepared to begin. But he's clearly irritated that what was supposed to be a serious, honorable duel is now morphing into some ridiculous carnival spectacle. He makes it crystal clear up front. He's not going to stop, even if Ghislain surrenders. But Ghislain isn't fazed in the slightest. He knows the bastard's real goal is simply to kill, surrender or not. Since the crowd's grown massive, Gislin officially kicks off the duel. Just then, a mysterious hooded figure interrupts, claiming the betting can't proceed like this. Everyone's bewildered until the portly merchant explains. No one has placed a bet on young Master Gislin. The crowd immediately starts whispering. It's clear they've already written him off completely. They think he doesn't stand a snowball's chance. Can even find it funny, like, even the marketplace wants nothing to do with Gislin. Because the bet is so utterly one-sided, they decide to adjust the rules to make things a little fairer. That's when Commander Scoven steps up with a bulging bag of money, placing his bet on Gislin. To everyone's utter surprise, Lady Elena also brings out a bag and bets on her brother. While people expected Scoven to show up, Elena's appearance catches even Gislin completely off guard, and the crowd is absolutely buzzing. She asks the merchant if that much money is enough, and he respectfully says, yes. Now that Gislin finally has some support, Kane agrees to start the duel, though he's clearly annoyed by how things are unfolding. The match begins, and Gislin offers Kane the first strike, saying that since Kane's the younger one, Big Brother would just love to give him the opening move. That cheap knockoff of the Hulk looks utterly confused by the gesture, but Gislin confidently draws his sword and calls him out. Kane goes silent for a second, then takes the bait. He gets in position, charges forward like a raging bull, and slams down with his enormous blade. Their swords clash violently. Kane puts every ounce of his strength into the hit, but Gislin doesn't even flinch. So Kane swings again, this time without thinking, and Gislin dodges it with effortless ease. The brute then jumps up for a kick, but again, Gislin casually avoids it. After this quick back and forth, both fighters retreat briefly. Kane grins with that same creepy smile, clearly enjoying himself. Gislin can practically taste the arrogance oozing off his opponent. Belinda is breaking into a cold sweat, watching her young master go head-to-head against this absolute beast. She even desperately urges Lady Elena to stop her brother. Meanwhile, that hooded guy is absolutely brimming with smug satisfaction, utterly convinced Gislin is completely doomed. He's certain Gislin has already stumbled right into the trap, the very moment he chose to fight Kane. In his mind, it was already over. Gislin will surely get overwhelmed by Kane's monstrous power, unable to find any way to counter him, and just burn out all his energy simply dodging. Eventually, Gislin will slip up and meet his demise. That's how Kane has absolutely crushed countless opponents, with nothing but pure, unadulterated brute strength. But this time, Gislin is proving to be more than a match. He's dodging every single attack with insane agility, even forcing Kane to reluctantly admit that Gislin has become significantly harder to pin down. His skills have clearly improved. Frustrated, Kane pushes the offensive even harder. He grabs his massive blade by its razor-sharp edge with his bare, monstrous hands and swings at Gislin with devastating full force. Though somehow, Gislin manages to block the blow using his own sword, but the attack traps him tightly within Kane's crossguard. Then, using all his brute strength, Kane hurls Gislin soaring high into the sky. Everyone is left utterly stunned, mouths wide open, watching their young master suspended impossibly in midair. The only person who seems absolutely thrilled is the hooded guy. He's utterly convinced Gislin is finally done for, but he's about to get a very rude awakening. While still airborne, though, Gislin channels mana into his legs and instantly regains his balance, landing gracefully back on the ground. Initially, Gislin had merely been holding back, but now that this absolute jerk has pushed things way too far, he's absolutely done playing nice. In a flash, he dashes toward Kane at utterly godlike speed and zips right past him. The hooded guy can't believe his eyes. Gislin managed to land completely unharmed, using mana in his legs. To Gislin, this oversized brute is absolutely nothing, but a clueless, overconfident swordsman. Probably someone who assumed he was completely unbeatable, just because a few people got intimidated by a mere glimpse of his strength. But Gislin's here to absolutely crush that delusion and show him that raw power isn't everything. Feeling utterly mocked, Kane charges again, demanding how Gislin plans to prove it. Gislin plants his feet, kicks up his sword's hilt, leaps into the air, and rains down a flurry of strikes. Cain valiantly fights back with his own blade, but Ghislain swiftly sidesteps him, even stepping on Cain's sword. Caught completely off guard, the brute is briefly disarmed. Ghislain seizes this opening and slashes him. After the intense exchange, Ghislain comes to a sudden halt, while Cain starts bleeding. From every spot Ghislain struck, the crowd is left absolutely speechless. Shock and awe ripple through them as they realize just how far Ghislain has truly come. Whispers turn into panic. Could he actually win this? Elena, proud and confident, tells Belinda her earlier fear was completely unnecessary. Commander Scoven watches with immense pride at this incredible display, but the hooded man is drenched in sweat. Noticing the wounds Ghislain inflicted are shallow, he realizes Ghislain could have gone deeper, but chose not to. That alone tells him Ghislain is in full control. Cain, on the other hand, feels utterly humiliated, witnessing such divine swordsmanship. Ghislain now turns to the defeated Cain and casually throws away his sword. He doesn't plan to use it anymore. He thinks the gap in their skill is so massive that weapons simply aren't needed. He's going to finish this with his bare hands. That much disrespect is enough to make Cain's blood boil. Ghislain is ready to teach him a brutal lesson. With his fists, since the big guys, strength lies in hand-to-hand combat. Ghislain decides to handicap himself and fight in his opponent's preferred style. And to make things even more interesting, he now bets 2,000 gold, double the original amount. The crowd is in utter disbelief, hearing such a high wager for a barehanded match, especially when it was supposed to be a sword duel. Meanwhile, the hooded man is practically melting, watching Ghislain fearlessly challenge Cain. Without a weapon, he never thought he'd see the day. Still, a part of him believes Cain might have a shot. The portly merchant quickly declares that this fight is now officially a bare-knuckle brawl and urges everyone to place their new bets. This time, a surprising number of people are backing Ghislain, finally realizing brute strength alone won't guarantee a win. Still full of himself, Cain accepts the challenge, but defiantly refuses to drop his sword. He fully intends to use it against Ghislain regardless. Belinda panics immediately, pleading with Ghislain to pick up his own sword once more. But the brute has already started swinging wildly, while Ghislain, calm and collected, remains completely unbothered, ready to knock some serious sense into this oversized fool. The very moment that sword came crashing down, Ghislain swiftly dodged, moving so fast his afterimage seemed to linger in the air. He landed a brutal strike on the opponent's massive leg, immediately following up with a devastating uppercut to the chin. Blood instantly gushed from Cain's face. That single blow was enough to rattle his brain completely, sending one of his knees crashing to the ground. It was unreal. Cain hadn't even seen the hits coming. The audience was just as stunned as everyone watching, absolutely reveling in this unexpected twist to the fight. Meanwhile, Ghislain radiated pure confidence and undeniable charm, claiming he hadn't even gotten serious yet and still wanted to have more fun. This clearly bruised the brute's delicate ego, making him grit his teeth in frustration before blindly charging at Ghislain once more. But our boy effortlessly danced around him, dodging every single strike with mesmerizing grace. The fight choreography was absolutely next level. Even for me, the narrator, it was hard to keep up with Ghislain's godlike, lightning-fast moves. No matter what Cain tried, every attack was met with an instant counter and an even stronger, more punishing hit. Blow after blow rained down on him relentlessly. As Cain reeled from the excruciating pain, he found himself thinking back, remembering how Ghislain once couldn't even meet his gaze, always bowing low whenever Cain appeared. But now that dynamic had completely flipped on its head. Cain kept getting absolutely hammered, reduced to nothing more than a personal training dummy. His whole body was a brutal canvas of bruises, his face so utterly beaten and mangled, so battered, not even his own mother would recognize him. At one point, Ghislain seized Cain by the hair. Gazing at this stubborn, battered mess of a man, he couldn't help but feel pity. Not for Cain, but for his family. Count Loges had always stood by House Peridium with unwavering loyalty, even as it crumbled, simply because he was a close friend of Gislin's father. But Cain was nothing like his old man. The scene then quickly shifted to the past. Cain was shouting at his father, furious about his unending support for House Peridium. He thought his father was throwing away valuable resources on a dying cause. It hadn't even been a week since Count Loges came back home yet. He was already preparing to leave again for Peridium. Cain had begged him not to go, his frustration boiling over at what he saw as blind loyalty. But the Count responded gently, yet firmly. He was doing it because they were friends. That was the only reason. Back in the present, Gislin balled up his fist. Everyone expected another brutal punch, but instead, he reached out with a hand of friendship. It shocked everyone. No one had expected this gesture, least of all Cain. But to everyone's surprise, Cain accepted it and admitted defeat. The crowd was floored. Cain conceding the match left everyone speechless. The referee wasted no time in declaring Gislin the winner. Members of House Peridium were thrilled, watching their young master shine. Elena was especially joyful to see her brother finally claim victory. But then, a hooded man stormed over to the defeated Cain and began scolding him. He couldn't believe Cain gave up so quickly, just because things weren't going his way. Cain didn't argue. He simply turned his face away and said he was done with the game. Since Cain failed to take Gislin down, the hooded guy started stressing about how he'd explain this to his seniors. Just then, our boy made another move. This time, with a mischievous grin, Gislin shouted loud enough for everyone to hear that the hooded man here had dramatically volunteered to cover the entire cost of all the meat and drinks for the thrilled crowd. Our hooded guy completely flipped out, utterly stunned by the sudden, shocking announcement. But the crowd? Oh, they went absolutely wild, absolutely thrilled at the prospect of free food and booze. The hooded man immediately protested, yelling he never agreed to any of this crazy scheme, and demanded Gislin take it all back. But our guy simply smiled, placed a firm hand on the guy's shoulder, and coolly told him this was the undeniable price of defeat. And no, this wasn't coming out of their existing bet either. He told him to add another 2,000 gold, on top of the original 1,000. If he tried to run, there'd be serious consequences. And when Gislani said that, he wasn't joking. The raw threat in his words burned straight into the man's memory, leaving behind the indelible image of someone absolutely not to be messed with. The very next day, in Gislin's room, we find Gislin intensely staring at a treasure chest, absolutely bursting with glittering gold coins. The amount of money he has amassed is actually pretty huge. To give you an idea of just how much it is, you could easily hire a small, dedicated mercenary corps with this kind of money, but it takes a lot of time to grow money. And those bastards who want him dead won't wait around for his forces to grow. So, he only has a limited amount of time to execute the ambitious business plan he has meticulously laid out. That's when Belinda and his sister stroll up to him, with incredibly satisfied smiles plastered on their faces. The way they're looking at him feels like they have some seriously ulterior motive, cleverly hidden behind those smiles. He quickly questions why they're even here, to which his little sister politely asks where he plans to spend all this newfound money. Of course, Gislin immediately catches on to what she's implying, so he directly asks her if she wants some, to which the lady responds that she's just asking. Right. Belinda then confidently speaks up, stating that she has a pretty good idea of where he's going to spend it all. She is absolutely sure that, since Lady Amelia's birthday is coming up soon, Gislin's definitely cooking up quite the grand spectacle, just to snag his fiancée a lavish gift. But let's be real, our boy's mind is nowhere near that. Not at all. However, the mere mention of fiancé hits Gislin like a ton of bricks. He genuinely can't even recall if he even has a fiancé. The maid chuckles softly, thinking he's just being shy. They're well aware he's faking cluelessness. Because he's embarrassed, they've figured him out. Still, since Elena's starting to notice her brother's been quite absent-minded lately, she decides to jog his memory that they're talking about Amelia of Rayford County. Finally, The name finally triggers some memories in Gislin's mind, but they're definitely not fond ones.